In 1995, the Rockets pulled off a feat few before them had ever accomplished: back-to-back championships. In the process of two-peating, they rebuffed the nickname Choke City and instead became Clutch City. Rudy Tomjanovich's offense ran through all-star Hakeem Olajuwon. The agile post could shake and bake defenders, or when he was inevitably doubled or tripled, he could get the ball to the open man. And he had options. There was high-flying Robert Horry, bad boy Vernon Maxwell, and steady-hand Kenny Smith. Getting big minutes off the bench, he had confident young gun Sam Cassell and versatile workhorse Mario Elie. Each Rocket worked together in harmony. They were great because they were a true team. And halfway through 95, that team added another star, Clyde Drexler. Hungry for his first ring, he helped Houston battle all the way from the 6th seed to the NBA Finals, surviving 5 elimination games in the process. Charles Barkley explained their never-say-die style. The Rockets are like a big old Texas roach. You put your foot on it, you hear the crunch, you think it's gone, then you pick your foot up and see that thing scurry away. In the finals, Houston scurried right on past the Magic in a 4-game sweep and accepted their second crown. Surrounded by his team, Rudy stood up to those who doubted the Rockets.
I have one thing to say to those non-believers. Don't ever underestimate the heart of a champion.
Don't ever? That's kind of a strong word, don't you think? The Houston Rockets, the machine that functioned as one unit, started losing parts before the 95 season even ended. That February, Vernon Maxwell punched a fan. Now, according to Maxwell, that's because the fan heckled him about his stillborn daughter, but the NBA still suspended him for 10 games. That's when the Rockets brought in Clyde Drexler to fill the two-guard hole for those 10 games, and then also keep being the starting two-guard even when Maxwell was back. Maxwell was not pleased. He feigned a hamstring issue in the Utah series and was sent home. Houston waived him a few weeks after the finals. So they didn't have Vernon Maxwell for the 95-96 season, but they did have a whole new look. As if trying to prove they were better than their uniforms implied, the Rockets got out to a dominating start, ending November 11-4. Then everyone got injured. They finished 48-34 and took the 5th seed in the West. But hey, that's better than last year, and they kind of have some underdog experience. Plus, everyone was back from injury. Here we go. They upset the Lakers 3-1. Could they really do it again? Oh my god, they lost the first game of the Western Conference semis by 33 points. They managed to mitigate their humiliation, losing the next 2 by just single digits. They pushed Game 4 to overtime with a barrage of fourth-quarter threes, but they couldn't keep it up in OT, and the Sonics took it. That's a sweep of the 2-time reigning champs. If it's any consolation, Gary Payton said it didn't feel like a sweep, and also compared the Rockets' tenacity to vampires instead of roaches, which I think is a big step up. The Rockets had to get themselves back in title contention for the 96-97 season. But how? Well, the Rockets love aging stars hungry for their first ring. What can they say? With Hakeem, Barkley, and Drexler together, the Rockets looked pretty intimidating. This was before the era when having a big 3 was common. See? They didn't even have the vocab yet. In order to get Barkley, the Rockets had to give up Robert Horry, Sam Cassell, Mark Bryant, and Chucky Brown. It wasn't that Houston wanted to get rid of those guys because last year went wrong. It was just that they were willing to do whatever it took to get Barkley. Now the Rockets had 2 low-post threats for their low-post-first offensive system. Barkley put the Rockets into championship contention instantly, which is pretty important because Olajuwon and Drexler were old and only growing older. Getting Barkley was a short-term solution. Win now before Hakeem and Clyde and Barkley were ravaged by age, worry about the future later. Houston was the oldest team in the league. Oh, did I mention they added Kevin Willis to back up Hakeem? They also released Kenny Smith. To fill their point guard gap, they signed three-point threat Brent Price and CBA player Matt Maloney. But all in all, the Rockets weren't super concerned about who they had at point. The post run the show. The 97 season was great until the injury bug reared its shiny little head. Barkley missed 25 games with back and hip and ankle problems. Drexler missed several weeks with hamstring trouble. Price suffered a season-ending injury in late February, which was a pretty big deal because the Rockets were in talks to trade Price for Derek Harper, trying to give themselves some more strength at the 1. The Rockets acted quick, signing Sedale Threatt to shoot threes off the bench and journeyman big guard Eddie Johnson, who, fun fact, was 37. And that ragtag crew alongside Olajuwon finished 3rd in the West. In the postseason, Houston had their big 3 reunited, and despite only playing 40 games together, it looked like their chemistry was there. They swept the Timberwolves, got past the Sonics in 7 games, and entered the Western Conference Finals against MVP Karl Malone and the 64-win Utah Jazz. And I bet that's when Houston really wished the Derek Harper trade had gone through. Maloney hung tough, but guarding John Stockton was too much for him. Houston was destroyed the first 2 games. Then, Eddie Johnson, who was 38 years old at this point, led him to a win in Game 3, and hit a buzzer beater for the win in Game 4. The Jazz won the next one, fine, but how about Game 6? It looked like Houston was going to take it. They were up 10 with just 3 minutes to go. Too bad John Stockton went off, and with 2.8 seconds left, the score was tied and Utah had the ball. Stockton ran off Malone's pick, which Drexler called more of a bear hug, and
Stockton, open 3, hit it!
The Houston Rockets season was over. Tomjanovich saw no reason to change things up too much in the offseason. They still had a great team. They just had to hope for fewer injuries. The 97-98 Houston Rockets season was dominated by injuries. Hakeem missed the first half of the season with a bum knee. Barkley struggled with a hernia and played with so little of his former fire, he was forced to admit, "I'm not a great player anymore, but I'm still a good player." If you think that sounds sad, you should hear how others were describing him. But perhaps worse than injuries, the Rockets showed another sign of aging. They got tired before the end of games. It was a sad, discouraging season. They finished at 500 and squeaked into the playoffs as the 8th seed, where everyone expected the Jazz to sweep them up and throw them out. But apparently, that insult was just what Houston needed. They won Game 1 so decisively, Mario Elie got to remind journalists of their broken dreams. Houston continued to defy critics and went up 2-1 in the series, but in Game 4, Barkley tore his tricep early in the second quarter. They lost that one. And in Game 5's loss, the lack of Barkley hurt, but also age caught up with them. A first-round exit for the Rockets. Drexler retired after the season. Houston knew the window to capitalize on their 2 aging stars was closing, but not shut yet. There's still some fresh air getting through. So, they doubled down on their win now with old stars strategy for the 98-99 season and replaced Drexler with 6-time NBA champion Scottie Pippen. Barkley had to take a pay cut in order for the Rockets to afford Pippen, but you know what's better than cash? Jewelry. Well, a specific piece of jewelry. Sure, they lost Mario Elie to free agency, and sure, they were still weak at point guard, but they drafted Michael Dickerson and Coutinho Mobley, maybe they'd be good. Honestly, with Pippen, Barkley, and Olajuwon in that inside-out offense, who needs a point guard? In the lockout-shortened 99 season, the Rockets were inconsistent. In March, they lost to the Trailblazers by 40 points. A week later, they blew a 20-point lead over the Suns and ended up losing by 14. What happened? Well, Pippen wasn't good. He blamed his poor performance on the Rockets' offense. He didn't like everything running through the posts, he didn't know where he fit in, and wanted to be more involved. Rudy tried to appease Scottie, running different plays, even trying the Bulls' famed triangle offense, to which Scottie merely replied, "It's not really the triangle offense." Tomjanovich got frustrated and implied maybe Pippen should work on getting himself open. And while it's easy to say Scottie whined with the Bulls and now he's whining with the Rockets, there was kind of some truth to what he was saying. In April, Houston lost 10 games and their offense was... Let's see, according to Barkley, we've got our choice of words, so I'll go with... bad. Sorry, I panicked. Whether he was right or wrong, the Rockets' Pippen troubles continued into the postseason, but in new and exciting ways. Round 1, Game 1, with just over a minute to play, the Rockets were up on the Lakers 100-98. Barkley fouled Shaq, which was the style at the time, and Shaq actually made one of them. With 26 seconds left and a 1-point lead, Pippen lost the ball. LA recovered it and went ahead and won the game. Afterwards, Pippen blamed Barkley. Barkley and Rocket fans and everyone who watched blamed Pippen. It leaked out more after the season, but apparently Pippen and Barkley were not best buds. The rest of the LA-Houston series seemed to simply come down to youth defeating age. Shaq held Olajuwon to 8 points in Game 2 and just 5 points in Game 3. LA eliminated Houston in 4 games. After the season, Pippen demanded a trade. Barkley took issue with that, and then Pippen let loose, calling Barkley fat and selfish. Days later, he got his trade. The Rockets sent him to Portland in exchange for a bunch of subs, of which they only kept 3. Not the most lucrative trade in the world, but Houston was just happy to see Scottie go. With just 2 aging stars and a weak backcourt, the 99-2000 season didn't look promising. But thanks to geography, the Rockets caught a break. Stick with me here. The Vancouver Grizzlies selected much-heralded ball handler Steve Francis 2nd overall, but as you can see through his nonverbal communication skills, Francis did not want to play for Vancouver. It was too far away from his family in Maryland and also too cold. Francis demanded a trade, and in an 11-player deal, Rudy finally got himself a point guard with all-star potential. Plus, he added free agent Shannon Anderson. The plan for the 99-2000 season was still to run their post-first offense, but to mix it up a little with some Francis and Anderson fast breaks. But you know what they say about the best-laid plans of mice and men? They're stupid. The injury bug that had bitten the Rockets so many times before had apparently laid eggs which hatched this season. In early December, Barkley suffered a career-ending quad tendon rupture. While technically he returned at the end of the season to play a few minutes and say farewell, the devastating injury was the end of the line for Charles Barkley. Olajuwon needed hernia surgery and missed 22 games. After that, a breathing problem limited him to just 24 minutes a game and eventually put him on the injured list. When he did play, Hakeem looked old and tired, but that's gotta be because of his breathing problem, right? Or maybe it's because of his knees? Either way, he wasn't playing great. The Rockets finished 34-48 and missed the playoffs for only the 2nd time in the last 15 years. If it makes you feel any better, Cuttino Mobley came into his own and Steve Francis was really good. He won Rookie of the Year. Well, co-Rookie of the Year. Houston even managed to beat some playoff teams at the end of the year, so maybe the 0-1 season would be better. It would certainly be different. The Houston Rockets were now Steve Francis's team and no longer old man Olajuwon's. Guess who didn't like that? Now, he might have been cranky because of a ton of nagging injuries, a sore foot, a swollen knee, a blood condition, but Olajuwon made his crankiness known. He complained to the press that he didn't know his place in the offense and said he wanted to be traded or released. Tom Janovich and owner Les Alexander had a meeting with Olajuwon, which smoothed things over. Hakeem even called into Tom Janovich's radio show to apologize. The Rockets finished 45-37, just 2 games behind the 8th seed. A 2nd season with no playoffs, but Tom Janovich was encouraged. Francis and Mobley had solid seasons, Houston almost made the playoffs, and their record was better than last year. Olajuwon became a free agent after the season. Houston offered him $13 million over 3 years, but Hakeem said no. He thought he was worth more, and so did the Raptors. Hakeem Olajuwon was no longer a Houston Rocket. Houston was sad to see the man who brought them 2 championships go, but they also knew the team was moving on with or without him. It seemed Hakeem knew that too. And perhaps moving on was a bit overdue. A short-sighted desire to capitalize on aging stars quickly and worry about the future later led to injuries decimating seasons, backcourt weakness, bruised egos, and of course, a big fall. But the fall put them in good draft position, and they still had an extremely talented young point guard thanks to his refusal to play in Canada. So while the championship-era Rockets were gone, there was plenty of reason to believe Houston would rise again. Like the roach you thought you squished, or the vampire you thought you stabbed 18 times, or, I guess, a rocket. Hey everybody, thank you for watching. Do you want to watch more stuff? We've got just what you need. More rockets and more collapse. Enjoy. For Secret Base, I'm Clara Morris. Good night and good game.